From KC24, your local election headquarters, with your host, Evan Nonstop. This is Sunday Morning Matters.
Hey, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us here on this Sunday. Hope you had a great 4th of July. Our reps in Congress, they were home for the week, but of course there's plenty still waiting for them back in Washington. There's the midterms, of course. It's always election season, it seems. But there's big issues, too, unresolved ones. Issues like immigration and foreign trade. And one of the people being as vocal as anybody there in Washington about some of these big issues, Congressman David Valadao, who joins us in studio. We talked via satellite, 2-3 weeks ago. It wasn't long. Yeah. It's nice to have you here in studio, though.
Thanks for having me.
Did you have a good 4th with the family?
Yes, I did.
Well, good. It's nice to step away, I bet.
It is. It is. It's nice to spend some time with family and barbecue and just have a good time.
Yeah, I believe it. I can believe that D.C. is a frustrating place.
Yeah, very.
I mean, does it ever get to the point, I know this is just speaking really broad, does it ever get to the point where all the hassle, you do all this work on trying to get a piece of legislation, the thing gets blown up and it doesn't end up passing anyways and nothing? I mean, do you ever just want to, do you ever consider throwing your hands up and saying, you know, I don't know how much longer I want to do this?
There's too much to fight for. But the one thing that we don't see a lot out there talked about, and we do send out our press releases and stuff, but it's not as exciting as some of the things that get blown up, obviously. But we do get some good wins. I mean, I had my Blue Water Navy bill passed the House the other day. I do believe it will become law. We're actually getting some good positive movement on our appropriations, where the Senate is doing things they've never done in the past, which is actually doing their job. Makes our jobs a little bit easier in the House side. So there's some positive things going on, but again, it's just not as exciting as some of the other stuff.
We all want to talk about immigration, right?
Well, and immigration's a big topic.
Of course it is. It's a big topic. It's something that, it's not a lack of trying on a lot of people's part, including your own, but I mean, what do you think it's going to take to get a comprehensive bill passed and signed by the president? Those are two different things, of course.
So one of the issues that I was taught a long time ago is don't fall in love with your own piece of legislation. And when you get an opportunity to vote on something like we did last week, the compromise bill, which Democrats will say, oh, we weren't at the table. There was a lot of conversation behind the scenes. There is a lot of stuff in the bill that they would have supported, they should have supported. It would have been nice to see more Republicans and obviously Democrats come on board and support the compromise. It was a good piece of legislation. It was a compromise. It wasn't anything that either side can celebrate and run to the home and brag about, but it was a good compromise.
But was it a compromise between everybody, or was it just a compromise between Republicans?
So it is, that bill was crafted amongst Republicans, so it was more closed-door meetings. And yes, Democrats did not play a role in the exact crafting of that bill as it was being drafted. But you have to remember, there's not a lot of things out there being talked about in immigration, a lot of solutions that they haven't been a part of, that they haven't negotiated as a part of. And especially if you compare bills like the 2013 Gang of Eight bill that passed out of the Senate with every Democrat senator voting for. There's a lot of things in this bill that were in that bill too that Democrats played a role in. It's not like we're inventing new policies and new creative ideas. I mean, at the end of the day, there's pretty much the same ideas being thrown together and saying, oh, this should get some support.
But it just seems like right now there are so many, there's polar opposites for when it comes. For example, I just talked to Congressman Costa, I think last week, 2 weeks ago, and he said that he thinks Democrats are going to need a path to citizenship, or at least legal status with the probable path to citizenship, not just for the DACA recipients, but for just about everybody who's here, you know, without documentation at this time. I don't see a huge or even a small number of Republicans getting behind that right now.
Well, so if you compare like the Gang of Eight bill from 2013, there was a path to citizenship for a lot more folks.
Yes.
Obviously the larger pot, but there was also it was like $46 billion total in border security. That includes what they'd spent on the border and the hiring of new Border Patrol agents. So there was more give and there was also more take. Trump came in with his 4-pillar plan, which has a little bit give and a little bit of take. It wasn't as big of a deal, but it was a step in the right direction. It was a partial of that big bill that had a lot of Democrat support, and for some reason they wouldn't support it now.
Well, I just wonder, even though now, if Democrats said, we will give you $100 billion to use however you want at the border, but give us a path to citizenship, I don't see, I don't know. I mean, I just don't see that being like, all right, sure, we'll take the deal.
No, and you're right. You're not going to get uniform every single Republican out there to support it, but there is a bunch of Republicans who would be at the table and would want to negotiate with that. I don't necessarily think we want to spend $100 billion or whatever the number is.
No, I know.
And I get that you're just trying to make an example of it, but this is a campaign year. This is an issue that people like to have in campaign years, and we had an opportunity the other day to send it off to the Senate and continue the debate, and it failed, and that was a huge frustration for all of us.
Yeah. Isn't it always a campaign, though, doesn't it seem? Especially with these 2-year cycles that you guys are in the House. As soon as you guys in one, then you got to step into another one, and it just seems you got to do next challenge. You know what I mean? It's a nonstop cycle.
Yes, there is a lot of that, but there are a lot of us that still believe that doing good policy and doing our jobs in Congress is how you get reelected. If you're not doing your job and doing your best to advance legislation that your district wants you to do, they're not going to reelect you. And getting in the way and just saying no to everything is not a solution. And I feel like that's what happened last week. A lot of folks that got in the way and just said no, instead of saying, we don't love this bill, but there are a lot of things here. There was protections in there for kids that are here, no fault of their own, dreamers, so they wouldn't be deported. There was protection to keep families together. And yes, there was a portion of what President Trump wants to help secure the border, which I don't think that should be a partisan issue as well. There's a little bit of everything in there, and there was enough to get, I believe, enough support from those who really, truly want to see something get done.
I want to ask you about tariffs. You wrote a letter a couple months back to a U.S. trade representative saying, and it was co-signed, I think, by Denham, Costa, some other people, saying that you're concerned about a trade war, really, based on these tariffs. I think at the time it was the one to China, the steel and aluminum. 2 months later, are those fears still there?
Yeah. No, the fears are still there. We're still continuing to put pressure on the administration. And yes, I had sent letters. I sent multiple letters to different folks in the administration, obviously to our trade representative, Lighthizer. We've sent some letters that direction as well, but also conversations that I've had every opportunity in person to mention things as well. To the conference, making sure that different representatives, depending on what committee they're on, especially Ways and Means with trade policy under their umbrella, making sure that our concerns are heard. So the issue on trade is important to us. The Central Valley depends on trade. But for years, we've also struggled with issues with trade. And so even on the way here today, talking to a farmer in Kern County who exports a lot of grapes, he says that we've got to get some of our concerns that we've had trouble with for years addressed. And President Trump is doing something about it, which we've not had in the past. Not all of us agree with the rhetoric. Not all of us agree with the way he's going about it. But we can't just ignore the issues we've been having for years either.
So you're saying it would be unfair to say that farmers categorically are not happy about what the president's doing with the tariffs and what is some of his talk right now?
I think it's fair to say that they're concerned, but it's also fair to say that they were also very concerned when when our past administration wasn't doing anything, and the administration before that wasn't doing anything. So having a dialogue, putting some pressure on some of our trading partners to make trade as fair as possible so that everyone benefits is something that farmers do want to see.
Yeah, so what is the play here? And we got a little bit less than a minute. I mean, so when you're talking to people in the administration, you obviously say that things can be done. You don't want a full-on trade war because obviously that hurts farmers.
Well, and I was down in Mexico City last year. I met with some of our counterparts there. There's opportunity there to make concessions on both sides that are helpful to both sides, things that will make trade easier and simpler. On the dairy side of things, with Canada, there is some real concessions that have to be made there. This Class 7 they've got where basically they just dump excess product on the marketplace really has a negative impact on prices. When you see things going on in India and China when it comes to our almonds and pistachios, it's things that a lot of farmers are concerned with. So making sure the administration knows here's some places where you can work and get some real solutions that help benefit us is one of the best plays for us to make sure we play into the administration and let them know where our opportunities are.
Congressman, always nice to have you stop by the studio. We appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.